So while we're waiting, I will invite you to go to our website, which is whyagain.org, and click on either the bullseye or the start here. Both of those take you to the same place, and that's where you will find our worksheets. There's audios, videos, lots of information. Put the tools to work in your life, and you'll see the change. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody. Honored and delighted once again to be sharing this this space with you as we look into these amazing first century tools that teach us how to live as human beings. And feeling blessed to have the opportunity to engage in these tools and to recognize just how this human organism, this thing we call the body-mind unit, operates, and then to recognize that the operation of a human life is different than that. And when one understands the distinction, then one has the opportunity to choose which direction they're going to go in. Was processing with someone the other day, and they were wanting to know the difference between happiness and joy, and wanting to understand what goes on with each of those things. And you'll notice that most people, when they get what they want, they'll say, well, I was really happy with that. And when you recognize that happiness is a result of achieving a goal, and it is an endorphin rush that is supplied by the structure in response to the achievement of a goal. That's why people can be happy about achieving a negative goal. Let's say something like vengeance. You'll hear people, I was so happy to get my vengeance on them. Well, how could you be happy to do vengeance? Well, actually, it's easy when you understand what causes happiness. Happiness is the endorphin rush, the high that comes just from achieving goals. So you can become addicted to that happiness. You can become addicted to that high, even around achieving negative goals. And you look at people, oftentimes we'll look at people and say, how could they even do such a thing? They get a high. They get a reward. Literally, on the level where there's chemistry, a chemical reward for achieving their negative goal. And people can become addicted to that. And so when people fail to achieve a perceived goal in the time frame that they desire, that's where fear or hostility tends to come into play. And the fear or hostility can override the happiness, but still there's that buzz that comes when one achieves a goal, no matter what the quality of the goal is. Joy, on the other hand, is a totally different experience. Joy is something that as you do your work, you'll find you're able to experience it more and more and more until it fills every space in your life. You can come to the point where you experience joy literally 24/7, 365, because joy is a result of experiencing ourselves as our created essence, love. And people cannot be joyful. They can be happy. You can't be joyful about doing something like, for example, of taking vengeance, because vengeance and human life, love, are incompatible with each other. So if you find yourself happy about something, but it's not joy, know that it's probably something that's incompatible with human life. And many times people lose awareness of themselves, and when I say the word themselves, the S is capitalized, the true self as love, when that awareness is flooded out by waves of fear and hostility. And when that happens, those achieved goals, the negative, destructive goals, still give that endorphin rush that, whether the goal is constructive or destructive, leads one to say, well, I was happy about that. I'm happy that person went to jail. If you think of it from the point of being, you think of it from the point of truth. You know, if we hear Einstein says, if you think you're separate or separated from the rest of humanity, you're living in an optical delusion. Somebody else can't suffer and you be in joy. You can't observe that and maintain that presence. But if you're doing your work and you relieve yourself of the hostility and fear-based energetic patterns, then you get to the point where joy becomes the normal state. And to achieve that, of course, it takes forgiveness. Forgiveness, remember, the word forgive meaning to remove. So when I remove every form of hostility or fear, the only thing left of me is me, the truth of who I am. You know, I love how the Course in Miracles says it. You need not seek for love. You need only seek, find, and release the barriers you built within yourself against it. And so the removal of the hostility and fear-based mind becomes a big key in the process. And we're here to bring those keys forward and recognize that the body has a mind of its own. You know, we have the true mind of being, and then there's the mind of the body. And the mind of the body is this automatic function of whatever content is moving within the structure moves. And so in our conversation with this character, Richard, in the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, chapter 17, it's on page 101 if you've got the book handy. I'm communicating with Richard, and the chapter starts out with, when we return from our walk, the focus of our discussion turned to resonance in the mind. I explained that the law of resonance is a law that governs all energy fields and is a law of energy exchange. What is resonance? Richard asked. Imagine I hold a middle C tuning fork and bring a second vibrating middle C, and Jean's got a question for me.
Now move your microphone up.
So imagine I hold a middle C tuning fork and bring a second vibrating middle C tuning fork near it. What will happen? Well, the first tuning fork will start to vibrate, he says. I remember the experiment from physics class in high school. What if I introduce a vibrating tuning fork tuned to F? Nothing happens, he chimed in. The tuning forks are tuned to different frequencies, therefore not in resonance with each other. The fork tuned to F will register nothing. So if there's no resonance, there's no energy exchange. Only when two fields are in tune or in harmony with each other is there an exchange of energy between them. When they enter each other's sphere, the stronger field transfers some of its energy to the weaker field and is strengthened. This is the same law that governs the function of the mind. So if we're in a circumstance where something is resonated in us that's based in hostility or fear, that's when we can become hooked into negative goals. And those negative goals, when achieved, produce this buzz. But it's totally fake. It's totally false. It's like the person who takes a drink and says, you know, who's in extreme pain, you know, drinks a fifth of scotch and then says, well, I'm not feeling any pain. Well, you're not feeling any pain, but the pain is there. Move in the direction of negative goals. Goals based in hostility or fear, goals based in harm, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial. When we experience some reward from that, we're in resonance with something based in hostility or fear in us. And in that circumstance, if I apply forgiveness, I will remove the hostility or fear associated with that circumstance and that situation. And if I go back to visit it tomorrow, there'll be no attraction to frame, set, or try to achieve a negative goal. I'll simply be able to free myself of that whole energetic pattern, that whole resonated field in me. Literally, forgiveness is about taking those energetic fields in us, like the middle C tuning fork. If let's say that fear is the middle C tuning fork, or F in this case is the middle C tuning fork. If something comes along that resonates fear is going to move in me. When I recognize that fear is moving in me, I have the opportunity to do one of two things. I can say to somebody else, "You really frighten me." So now I'm in denial. I'm pretending that something outside of me is the cause of this fear moving in me. My second option is to be in a state of responsibility and own, what you just said brought some fear up for me. And I'm going to apply forgiveness to my fear so that I can live as a fear-free being. What does a fear-free being experience? They experience the truth of who they are as active present love. Now it makes sense that in any circumstance, literally any circumstance the world can throw at you, you can remain connected to joy. The most terrible thing in non-human terms that the world can offer you, you can stay connected to the truth of who you are. And though you may not like that experience, you may not like that circumstance, if there's no hostility or fear in you, that circumstance will not remove joy from you because it is yours. It is a reflection in human physiology of who we are as human beings. And in the non-human world, in the hostility and fear-based world, that might seem to be a totally senseless conversation. But when you start to apply forgiveness in your mind and remove those middle C tuning forks, those things based in hostility or fear, all of a sudden you get to a whole different experience. And what we're here to do is support, quite literally, every mind, heart, and being on the earth, recognizing who they are as human beings, as the presence of love, and being freed from the generational patterns, the environmental experiences where we've accepted some form of resonance based in hostility or fear. So the restoration of human life, literally, to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. Now, does that mean I need to smile and approve of every insane thing that happens in the world? Absolutely not. I can remain connected to aliveness, connected to love, connected to joy, and experience something that is off base in the structure happening and choose to be the space that brings healing to that. And it might mean speaking accountability to whatever that issue was. And I can maintain my connectedness with joy. It's a state that perhaps is going to take some time for each individual. If we've come up in a hostility and fear-based world, it's going to take some time to be restored to the presence of joy when experiences, and for a long time, my take is there have been people who had a comprehension if they could keep people in hostility and fear, if they could keep them away from knowledge, then they could control them. And that individual would never experience their human lives, the truth of who they are. We are here to free, and that would be a negative goal that would develop for an authority to keep those under the thumb. What we're looking to do is to free literally every mind, heart, and being from those energetic patterns that are under the thumb so that we are restored to the truth of who we are, and we literally function out of love. We function out of a state of joy. On the way there, when that idea is first introduced to most people, it's like, well, that's incomprehensible. But as you begin to do your work, just as a signal that will tell you you're making progress, you may find yourself in a circumstance where there's some form of hostility or fear going on, something moving in you, and you may tend to fall into it, become identified with it, and play it out, develop. Many times we've spoken about becoming the thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from the feelings, the actor apart from the actions. When you can step back and do that, then even in the middle of your muddle, in the middle of hostility or fear, if you can just allow yourself to just get still for a moment and take a breath, you'll notice that that underlying joy is still there, even while remnants of hostility and fear tuning forks are still moving in you. And as you delete them, the natural state is a state of joy, the state of aliveness, human life. Quite literally, the active presence of love. And one of the best ways to verify that for yourself is just go back to a moment where you held a newborn and tap into the energy of that newborn. And notice what the truth of human life is. It quite literally, the active presence of love. So we're honored and delighted to be here in this conversation with you. Hope that makes sense, and if it arouses any questions or thoughts, our call-in number, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, our call-in number is 563-999-3581, 563-999-3581. And if you call that number, you'll be listening to the show. If you push 1, that will raise a hand in the phone queue. Jeanie will know you want to talk to us and introduce you by your area code. And we'd love to have a conversation with you. Miss Jeanie, do we have anything happening in the chat room or anybody in the phone queue with a hand up?
We have several people in the chat room and several people on the switchboard, but there are no questions in either place. So we have 41 minutes. We got plenty of time. Press 1.
Yay. Let's say hello. What about that conversation that I just had either made sense or didn't make sense for you? Let's open a discussion about it. If I had been in your local community, your local town, at the local library or school or church or university or maybe a prison, and you happen to be in the audience listening to what I just said the last 15 minutes or so, if I came down off of the platform, would you have a question for me? And most people would. And so this is a space. Imagine I've just walked off the platform in your hometown, and you'll come over to me and you'll say, Michael, what about? Well, here's a space to ask that question. The very purpose of this radio show is to open the space, to present something that stimulates us into activity, and then to open the space for a conversation, clarifying each idea, each aspect of what we're doing. One of my early mentors in understanding this process was a man named Judge Asa D. Kelly. Judge Kelly was a Superior Court judge in Albany, Georgia, which is a pretty heavy-duty town. It's in southern Georgia and town of Albany, and it's a pretty rough town. And Judge Kelly, probably one of the closest beings I've ever seen to being a saint. And Kelly would have people who had committed some of the most heinous crimes walk into his courtroom charged, and he would offer that person the presence of his love. And then he would explain to them, and these are the words that he would use. Your community has taken up a collection and built a building with a set of bars around it to determine who is safe in the community and who is not. And with the charges that are before you and the evidence we have, it's obvious you're not safe in this community. Therefore, I'm going to lock you away for the next, 6 months or 20 years or life. And he never punished anyone. He held them accountable for being good citizens within his community that he honored and cherished, but he never punished anybody. I mean, thousands of people in his tenure on the bench. I mean, he was in his 80s when he left the bench. Thousands of people. Never punished one of them. And in fact, would offer them a space of redemption. The place that the course we teach, Laws of Living, comes from was originated by Judge Kelly. It's like, we want something. So it was a request. We had a company called the Judicial Service Agency in Albany, Georgia. And we did pretrial release programs in concert with Judge Kelly. He asked for something to redeem people from the insanity that they'd been subject to, the pain, the trauma, the hatred, the vengeance, the grief, the guilt, the abuse. Go talk to anybody in the prison system, and it won't be long before you're hearing about their childhood and how, daddy was in prison, or mom was in prison, or dad was a druggie, or mom was murdered. I mean, just story after story after story. And Judge Kelly had the capacity to see through the present circumstances to the original cause with those who had committed crimes, and had enough presence of being and compassion to want to offer healing and support in those circumstances. And it was a result of his request that we created the Laws of Living course. And the idea was, he would set up a pretrial release program or circumstance with each individual. He'd form a contract with them. If they signed this contract, we would do a personal code evaluation with them. We'd turn it over to Judge Kelly, look at the profile. Is this person safe to be out of prison? Well, no, if you look at the hostility score and the honor for others score that are down in the teens on a scale of 100, no, this person has so much rage and they're pointing it at somebody outside of themselves. No, they are not safe in the community. You could have exactly the same scores, except that instead of the honoring of others being down in the teens, it was honoring self. But if honor for others was up high, then that person would go into pretrial release, and he'd let them out of jail, like right out of the courtroom, because they were not a threat to others. Yes, they were a threat to themselves, but they weren't likely to commit a crime again. And so we would teach people both within the prison and people that he had put on pretrial release. We had a classroom that people would come into and learn the laws of living. And we'd present the personal code evaluation to him again, evaluating what state their minds were in. And when he could see that the profile was such that they were safe in the community, he'd let them out of jail. The program was so successful that we cut recidivism by over 90%. The sheriff became very agitated and very upset about that, because the sheriff needs people in his jail in order to get the per diem rate from the state that pays for his jail. If he's got nobody in there, it's kind of like a hotel. If the hotel doesn't have occupancy, it doesn't stay in business very long. We cut his occupancy severely, was not happy with us, and eradicated the pretrial release program, eradicated the laws of living. So we've taken those principles and brought them into the general population, said, here are the tools. Here's how we repair the human mind. Here's how we restore the active presence of love, human life, to a human mind. And when a human mind is fueled by active present love, then behavior is different, everything changes. And we're here to support those kinds of changes occurring. And so push one and share with us what that resonates for you. What does that bring up for you in our conversation here? And how can we support you? What's on your mind? By the way, if you haven't used the tools yet, you can go to our website, whyagain.org. And if you go to that page, in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a button that says Start Here. Click the Start Here button, and it will walk you through everything we know about forgiveness. And page after page of support for working through the issues of hostility or fear.
We have a hand up.
A hand up? Well, let's say hello. Awesome.
Area code 541, you're on the air.
Good morning, Michael and Jeanie. This is Celinda.
Welcome, young lady. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, good to hear my voice, too. I got a froggy in my throat. I hope you can understand me.
You're loud and clear.
I want to thank you. Oh, good. I would like to thank you for that clarification between happiness and joy, because I knew happiness was involved with getting something or getting things to go your way, but I didn't realize it was an endorphin rush. So that really clarifies it for me. Can you clarify for me also about joy? Is it an endorphin rush, or is it just the awareness that you are in the state of love and that you are consciously connected to love?
There was a paleontologist back in the 50s, and his quote, I'm not thinking of his name right offhand, what he said was, joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God. Now, the infallible sign, presence of God. Okay. This was Teilhard de Chardin. You can actually find some of his videos online. He was a paleontologist and a Catholic priest. Interesting combination. Okay. Now, I don't quite agree with him. I don't quite agree with him, because if that were true, everybody would be in joy 24/7, 365. We just need to add one word. Joy is the infallible sign of the awareness of the presence of God, and remembering that God is love. When we allow ourselves to be steeped in love, joy will be the reflection of that presence of active love. If we let ourselves be flooded by hostility and fear, then because of the immediacy of those energies, the tendency will be to block out the awareness of the joy that is natural, that is present 24/7, 365. It's kind of like, and you go back to the scripture, and they talked about the still small voice. Joy is the still small voice. If it's overridden by raging pain and trauma, then that voice tends to be drowned out. As you forgive, then you weaken the voice that drowns out the presence of joy. And, another scriptural issue or statement that addresses that, I think it was Paul who spoke about, as he becomes more, I become less. As the active presence of love becomes more solidified in our experience, and the hostility and fear-based false self is weakened through forgiveness, then that just becomes our natural state. And each time you forgive, what forgiveness does is it literally weakens the energetic patterns of hostility and fear.
That's sweet, because I remember once in educational kinesiology or some other source that I was reading, and it really resonated with me, is that the subconscious mind has direct access to love. But the conscious mind can access it, but it can also block it, and it's usually blocked because the conscious mind usually will only honor the five senses. Could you comment on that?
There's where Yeshua said, when they asked him, and basically that's what I hear your question being, how do you be a human? What's most important in all of this that we're talking about? He doesn't say love your neighbor and love God as you love yourself. What he says is you must have Rachma when you think of the Creator, when you think of neighbor, in order to maintain self. And Rachma is this gateway, this filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that, when kept open, is the entryway for active love to come into this human form. The other two filters in the frontal lobes of the brain are hostility and fear. When they are active, and only one can be active at a time, when hostility or fear is active, then Rachma is shut down. As you forgive as to hostility and fear, then those things weakened make it easier to keep the gateway called Rachma open continuously. And in the same circumstance where yesterday there had been nothing but drama and trauma, one can experience the presence of active love and joy.
And it would seem to me that if you're keeping Rachma in mind, that it is actively filtering, closing off the fear and hostility. So it's like this, it's like a swinging door.
Gateway. Gateway. Only one filter can be active at a time. And you can tell
sort of like
which is active. You know, they said to Yeshua, how do we tell where we're at? How do you tell where somebody's at? He said, you look at the fruit. So if the mind, in terms of intentions, is bringing forth intentions keyed to love, you'll know that Rachma is active. If the mind is bringing forth either destructive or negative intentions, and the destructive comes from hostility and the negative from fear, if they're bringing forward those qualities of intention, that's the gateway that's open. And only one can be open at a time. If I recognize that, then I jump in and do the work of forgiveness. Rather than get into a conversation about blaming somebody else, puking on somebody else, trying to change their behavior so I don't have to deal with what's inside of me, when I stop and recognize, oh, I have some forgiveness work to do. Here's my hostility. Here's my fear. I think I'll love truth enough to actually honor myself enough to recognize what I'm doing to myself. Then I get to literally apply forgiveness and weaken those frequencies of hostility or fear, thus freeing myself from their influence. Then Rachma becomes the most natural state of all.
Which is sweet. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, or comment on that, it seems to me if Rachma is the filter for the frontal lobes, then Kuva is the filter for the hindbrain. The back
filter,
brain.
The Huba is the filter over perception, which is the back of the brain.
Right.
Rachma is the frontal, which is,
Which is intention, intention, right?
Correct. So intentions are held in the frontal lobes of the brain, and the reason why it's important that you maintain Rachma there is that allows intentions to be keyed to love, and intentions are the raw material of goals. So it's only when our goals are keyed to love that we're going to frame and set goals, commit ourselves to goals or results that are keyed to love. When that happens, then Rachma is automatically activated. Instead of hostility or fear being active over perception, then Rachma is active. And again, you look at the fruit. What's the fruit of Kuba over the perceptual brain, perceptual part of the brain, and the perceptual system? The result of Kuba is that we're going to end up with perceptions that are keyed to love. When hostility is active, perception is going to be keyed to threat. So you can look at someone that 2 seconds ago you were like, oh, I cherish you, I honor you, I will cherish you forever. Then they give you the look, and that if that resonates hostility, all of a sudden you're as irritated as hell at that person. I mean, literally, in a 25th of a second, one can go, if they're not conscious and aren't taking charge of their own minds, being responsible for what's happening in them, they can go from, oh, you are so awesome, I just cherish, oh man, I'm going to just hold you in this space forever, and then they give you the look, and all of a sudden, don't touch me, don't come near me, I never want to see you again. What just happened? One shifted from Kuba being active, hostility being active. There's threat. And so now I'm feeling threatened around this person. And I think I'm being threatened by that person, but the threat is coming from my own mind. If that person in their, whatever they do, resonates fear, then, pardon me, I just switched those backward. It's irritation when hostility is active, and it's threat when fear is active. That'll be the quality of perception. So when someone gives me the look and it brings up irritation in me, that is a result of hostility filter. When their look brings up threat in me, that's a result of the fear filter being active.
Perfect. So now I have just linked intention, of which Rahma is the filter of, with the I want in the goal, the desire that the person wants to see happen.
Correct.
So with Rahma, it would be more desire, and with, because that's thriving and creating, but with wanting, that would be lack. That would be survival. Okay. I got it. And I wanted to share with you one other thing, which is kind of humorous. You know, Larry and I are elderly, and so we tend to snore. And we get really excited about our snoring and our deep breathing and stuff like that, which keeps the other person awake. Well, I know, and very often I would end up on the couch, and Larry, because this is a motorhome, and Larry would be in the bed. And I happened to comment to Larry the other day. I said, you know, you haven't been snoring as much, and I am not on the couch anymore. And he says, yeah, you haven't been snoring either. So I want to tell you that this is a delicious side effect. You haven't been snoring enough to wake me up. And this is a delicious side effect of doing the worksheet. And Louise Hay says that snoring is a stubborn resistance to changing. Yeah. So I thought I'd share that
right
with
on.
you.
Yeah, stubborn resistance to changing, snoring. That would tie into blockage of truth.
Yeah.
If I don't want to look at the truth, you know, there's that stubborn resistance to, no, I'm not going to change. This is all your fault. I'm puking on you because you deserve it. I'm not going to admit that puking on you is toxifying my body and that I'm getting the original and you're just getting a carbon copy. I'll never admit that. But, you know, that's the process, and that's why honoring truth, you know, when we did the evaluation in the intensive, and the main issue for this past intensive, everyone has its own persona, its own personality, but the main issue of this last intensive, if you remember, was all honoring truth. And so that became a real key in the process.
Yeah, and I think my honoring truth went from being equal to honoring self to being number one and honoring self number two. So I know where my work is.
Cool. Awesome.
All right. Awesome.
Fabulous,
Thank
young
you,
lady.
Jeanie. Thank you, Michael.
All right.
I am complete.
Well, anything else on your mind? All right. Well, you have a blessed one and the best year yet of your eternal life. Happy New Year.
And laugh a lot.
All right. Blessings. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, Miss Jeanie, we've got about 19 minutes left. Do we have anything happening in the chat room or anybody with a hand up in the phone queue?
No, nothing. It's all quiet.
Okay. Well, before we heard from Celinda, I was just about to say that if you want to engage in the actual step-by-step forgiveness process, the worksheet tool, and if you go to our website, you can actually, whyagain.org, you can actually utilize the worksheet right there live on your computer on the website. Or there are several different versions of the worksheet, and they're different versions because over the years I've worked with different ideas on designing this worksheet process for engaging in first-century Aramaic forgiveness. And I found some things more and some things less effective, so it was a process of experimentation until we arrived at the sheet that we currently use today. So we've kept copies of those old ones because people got used to them and found them effective. And many people find that rotating worksheets is shifting them up from time to time helps them to open new spaces within themselves. And so you can do the worksheet on the website. You can download and print from your computer any one of the different versions that are on the website. And you can go to your app store on your phone and just type in the words Heartland, Heartland, one word, Heartland, Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness. And what you'll be looking at is the world's only forgiveness app. And you can download that app free. It's a totally private app. The only permission that it asks for is the permission to use the internet. We're not interested in, so many apps out there. We want to take pictures. We want to send texts. We want to make phone calls. We want to change your database. We want to download your, none of that. Simple permission. One, got to use the internet in order for it to work. That's it. So you can put anything in there you want. It's totally and completely private. When you complete doing a worksheet on your phone, and there are two different versions of the worksheet in the app, when you complete doing one of the worksheets, then you can save it as a PDF on your phone, and it will ask for permission to write to your drive, of course, so that it will be able to save that for you. But other than that, there are no permissions required. It's totally private, and you can engage in first-century Aramaic forgiveness right there on your phone. So we've got some of the most ancient technology coming up to, and right there on your phone, bringing that ancient technology forward with some of our latest technology. Pretty cool. Pretty cool deal. And Jeanie, thank you for all the work that you did to bring that app to fruition. So many hours. Jeanie got up at 5 in the morning to be on the phone with the technicians in India while their offices were still open, to be able to communicate and put together that app, which is just fabulous. There are two different versions of worksheet you can do on the app, and there's also a children's game called the Dragon Klingon game. So you can introduce children to forgiveness through the app on your phone. So lots of ways to engage in the tools. And then, of course, the purpose of this radio show is as you work with the tools, questions come up. What do you need to know? How can we refine your understanding and inspire you to take the tools and use them to break through, the hostility and fear games that your mind plays with you? Oftentimes people block their hostility, block their fear, pretend it's not there, but then when they look at how it impacts the family system, they go, well, what's wrong with me? Why are you not hanging around me? Well, gee, Mom, Dad, you puke on me so often, I just don't really want to be there. What, me? Blockage of truth. So what happens as you use the tools is blockage of truth is undone, and we get to the point where we're willing to honor truth. And when you shift the mind from blocking truth to honoring truth, life is a totally and completely different experience. And we are here to support you having that totally and completely different experience where no matter what's going on in your world, you experience yourself as the active presence of love. You get to tap into the people around you as the active presence of love, and you get to the point where you're willing to honor that instead of honoring your hostility and fear and your perceptions based in pain. You, instead of, well, that person did this, therefore I'm going to withdraw my love and I'm never going to talk to them again. You get to start to overlook, recognize where people are coming from, and you get more and more to be able to embrace the people around you. You get to soften the places in you that hold whatever kind of fearful or hostile content your mind holds. And you get to bring the active presence of love into deeper and deeper parts of your own physiology, which means you're able to extend it out more and more to anyone and everyone that you interact with. And of course, the purpose of this radio show is you take those tools and you put them to work. Questions are going to come. And we're committed to giving you the best answers we have to every question. And we often find that as you ask a question, you open a whole new piece of the puzzle for Jeanie, for myself, for Dr. Tim, for Michelle. You open whole new pieces of the puzzle that empower us to step into another arena of inquiry and another area of cleaning up the mind. So delighted and honored that you're here with us. And we're down to the last, I don't know, what have we got about?
13 minutes.
13 minutes. So how can we support you? What's on your mind? What's exciting in your world? And if we don't have a hand up or anything happening in the chat room, then I'll open a discussion about the upcoming intensive, 27th of January. If you're ready to go for the next level of doing your work, and we've got an interesting intensive developing with the people that are choosing to tap into it. And we just finished doing this same intensive, the Codependence to Interdependence Communication Practicum. And you've heard people talking about some of the openings and just profound things that have happened for them as a result of this inquiry. Well, what you'll engage in if you choose to participate in this next intensive, and it'll go over 14 weeks from the 28th of January through the 27th of April.
You've actually got those backwards, the 27th of January to the 28th of April.
Oh, okay. Thank you, sweetie, for having that in front of you and knowing what we're doing. So the 27th is a Wednesday evening, and from 6 to 8 o'clock Wednesday evening, as part of the intensive, we'll be doing a personal Zoom call and teaching, interacting, and using process and answering questions. Each week, we'll release 4 hours of live video from the first intensive. So that live video you'll do at your leisure. It'll be your own personal self-study. And then the Wednesday evening call will be for conversation, process, questions, and answers. And so you'll have access to 58 hours of video, and you'll have permanent access to that. Once you participate in the intensive, then you'll have access to that 58 hours of video. And that includes why is this happening to me again, healing through relationships, communications, you hear what I think I said, and codependence to interdependence. We'll go into depth into each of those topics. There are 3 personal code evaluations. You know, I was talking about what Judge Kelly set up. Well, we use that very tool as a way to simply point to where is one's most important work. So you'll get the feedback from the personal code evaluation. You'll get specific suggestions for your particular evaluation profile as to here's how you can heal the parts of your mind that perhaps you've been hiding from yourself. And so we'll go through the 14 weeks. 2 hours per week will be personal conversation on Zoom. And we'll be recording that, of course. And so on top of the 58 hours that you will gain to self-study, that 28 hours will also become permanently available to you. So we're up to 58, 68, 78, 86 hours of video over 14 weeks. And so if you're interested in joining in that process, if you drop Jeanie an email, if you've got my phone, you're welcome to drop me a text or call me. And or Jeanie's email is JEANIE at WHY.org. Drop Jeanie an email with your phone number, and I'll be calling you. We'll have a conversation and see if it's appropriate for you to be jumping on board to do that intensive. We're setting up what I'm kind of referring to. It's a new idea for us, what we're referring to as a rolling intensive. So when we start this one on June the 27th, everyone, about 25 people in that first
January.
January, wrong month. You know what I mean. We'll have the 25 people that were in the last intensive will have access, have been invited to this intensive as guests, as you will be invited to the next intensive as guests, so that you'll have permanent ongoing support every time. You'll have permanent access to all 86 or 88 hours of videos that are developed from these two intensives, and you'll be invited to participate free as an intensive participant the next time we do codependence, dependence, communication practical, and the next time, and the next time, and the next time. So it'll be an ongoing rolling intensive, and I just see the support base growing larger and larger each time, where those who've done the intensive once get to come back and get support and refine and deepen their understanding. I mean, we covered a lot of material in 58 hours, and in depth. There were several major issues that opened for people that just open to processing and bring those things forward. And it's a pretty profound experience. So if you want to participate in that, drop Jeanie a note, give me a call, and we'll set up for you to come play starting on January 27th. And beyond that, we are down to about 6 minutes. One conversation would be nice. Somebody out there with a thought for us? Which one? Let's have a conversation. Come on, don't be shy. It's okay. Okay, so your voice is a little shaky. So what? Does that matter? Okay, so you're new to it. You're not sure what questions to ask or if your question's important. Every question's important. In fact, the gift of questions is that oftentimes when someone who's new at the work asks a question, it opens some of those foundational principles on a new level for many people. And so the question that seems the most obvious, or one feels the least insecure about asking, can oftentimes be the most important question. So please push one and ask the question. And if there are no questions, then let's just take a few minutes and get quiet, allow yourself to breathe. And as you breathe, I'm going to invite you to just check out your whole body from within. Check out your whole structure. How's the energy moving? How's it feel in your throat, your neck, your head? If there are any restrictions, allow yourself to breathe. Let your awareness move down into your chest, arms, your torso. Down through your buttocks and your groin, into your legs. Allow yourself to breathe. Are you experiencing any tension anywhere there? As you breathe down into your knees, down into your feet. Are there any restrictions of any kind? And if so, just invite you to breathe. It has to be shown what the content is there that's creating the restriction. And as you breathe, notice where in your structure your breath goes. You may be inclined, the minute you notice that perhaps your breath is restricted, to just pick up breathing and forget about it. But what we're going to invite you to do instead is to breathe and let your awareness slide into the tissue that's restricted yourself. What's the thought I'm holding that's restricting the energy flow through this tissue. And breathe. You notice restriction anywhere. Take your awareness to that place within your structure. Soften and breathe into it and let it open. You may be surprised at the content that you find there. Allow yourself to stand in willingness to let all content that you hold within you be revealed. Content is energy. Energy impacts the function of tissue. If the content is based in hostility or fear, best you forgive it, remove it, elsewise it will have a deleterious effect on your tissue structure. I'd offer all of our diseases are made of energetic patterns that don't belong within the structure. And when I allow myself to breathe into and embrace those patterns, maybe it's in the lungs or the chest, maybe it's in the diaphragm, the belly, the thighs. Maybe there's a tightness in your buttocks. If so, let yourself be aware of it. Why is there tightness there? What are you holding that creates that tightness? Breathe into that part of your structure and let your awareness open. As you breathe deeply, you might notice qualities of energy that are not so pleasant. Oftentimes the adult who allows themselves to open a particular part of the tissue structure. In this case, I just mentioned the buttocks. Maybe it's a place where you were beaten more than once, and the energy of that beating still resides. Bizarre thing in the world that a parent could raise a hand to this presence of love that's coming into their lives and structure their minds out of hostility and fear. But a parent who has not resolved their own hostility and fear-based issues, will tend to do just that. And so oftentimes these are generational patterns that we can open to and just let be liberated, just allow it to let loose, release. And as you breathe in and release, you can just breathe in the active presence of love and gently let everything else loose. Breathe in the active presence of love and let everything else loose. Breathe in the active presence of love and let everything else loose. You are made for the presence of love. You were designed to function out of the presence of love. Allow yourself to recognize who you are as the presence of love. And to live from that 24/7, 365. It is your birthright to do that. And doing so, create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. I'm blessed.